Him. About power, and upstairs Maribel paused, hearing something in her bones even if she didn't hear the words. But before she could turn back, Evelyn tightened her grip, threatening to call the police, threatening to say he attacked her, threatening to end his mother's job and worse, and Isaiah began to cry, silent tears at first, then sobs he tried to swallow, begging her to let him go, promising to leave, promising anything, and Evelyn felt a surge of something ugly and triumphant because in that moment she felt in control again. But what she didn't know was that the front door had just opened, that the conference had ended early, that Thomas Whitmore had decided to surprise his wife, that his umbrella dripped onto the polished floor as he stepped inside. Hearing a sound that didn't belong in his home, a sound like fear, and as he followed it toward the kitchen, his world fractured in an instant because he saw his wife gripping a crying child, saw terror on the boy's face, heard the words, "Please stop." And something in Thomas snapped, not into rage first but into a cold, focused clarity, the kind he used in boardrooms when deals went bad, and he demanded an explanation, and Evelyn froze, releasing Isaiah as if he were suddenly burning her, and she began to speak quickly, defensively, spinning a story about theft, about disrespect, about danger. But Thomas held up a hand, his eyes never leaving Isaiah, kneeling down to the boy's level, asking his name, asking if he was hurt, and Isaiah, shaking, looked toward the stairs where his mother was now running down. And when Maribel saw her son's tear-streaked face, something primal broke through her exhaustion, and she rushed to him, wrapping him in her arms, apologizing over and over even though she didn't know for what yet. And Thomas watched this reunion, watched the way Isaiah clung to his mother, watched the way Evelyn stood apart, rigid, and the truth assembled itself piece by piece. And that should have been the end, but it wasn't, because when Thomas asked Maribel what happened, she hesitated, years of fear tightening her throat, and Evelyn seized on that hesitation, insisting there was nothing, that the boy was overreacting, that she had every right to protect her home, and for a moment the old patterns threatened to reassert themselves, wealth smoothing over discomfort, silence bought with money. But Thomas surprised them all by asking Isaiah directly, telling him he would be safe, telling him to tell the truth, and Isaiah spoke haltingly at first, then with growing strength, describing the accusations, the grip on his arm, the threats, the way she said no one would believe him, and with every word, Evelyn's mask cracked further, and Thomas felt a sickness settle in his stomach, not just at what he heard but at what it revealed about the person he had married. And the story twisted again when Maribel, emboldened by her son's courage, confessed that this wasn't the first time Evelyn had spoken cruelly, that insults were common, that fear was constant, and Thomas realized his absence. His focus on success had created a vacuum where something rotten had grown, and he told Evelyn to leave the room, and when she protested, he told her to leave the house, and the power shifted so suddenly it felt unreal, and Evelyn's face hardened into disbelief because she had never imagined being the one asked to go, and she left, heels striking the floor like gunshots, and Thomas sat with Maribel and Isaiah, apologizing not as a millionaire but as a man who had failed to see, and he offered to call the police, to press charges, but Maribel shook her head, knowing too well how systems could twist, and instead Thomas promised something else, something quieter but no less radical, that Isaiah would never again feel small in his house, that Maribel's job was secure if she wanted it, that counseling would be arranged, that Evelyn's behavior would be confronted publicly and privately. And in the days that followed, the truth didn't stay contained, because Thomas filed for separation, because word spread among staff, because Evelyn's carefully curated social image cracked under whispers she couldn't control, because Thomas insisted on accountability not as a performance but as a practice, funding programs, speaking openly about implicit bias, inviting discomfort instead of hiding from it, and the biggest twist of all came months later when Evelyn, facing legal consequences in the divorce, revealed a bitter secret, that she had grown up watching her own mother mistreated by wealthy employers, that she had learned to survive by aligning herself with power rather than empathy. A confession that explained but did not excuse, and Isaiah, meanwhile, changed too. His fear slowly replaced by a fierce sense of worth, excelling in school, later earning a scholarship funded quietly by Thomas, who never claimed credit, and years later, when Isaiah stood at a podium as a civil rights attorney, telling a story about a rainy morning and a kitchen and a moment when someone finally listened. Thomas sat in the back, anonymous, tears in his eyes, understanding that coming home early that day had been the most important decision of his life, because it had forced a reckoning, not just in his house but in himself, and the story ends not with perfection but with responsibility, with the understanding that cruelty thrives in silence and justice begins the moment someone says, "Stop," and someone else chooses to listen. And if the story moved you, if it made you uncomfortable, if it made you think, then remember why you subscribed, because stories like this aren't just entertainment, they are mirrors and sometimes they are warnings.